So welcome again. Now it is time to register the user. So we have few objectives that we have to go through. The first one is to validate the user data, then to create a service to add the user to the database, then generate access and refresh tokens, and then storing the refresh token in the cookies in a certain route. And then we'll send back the user data to the front end. So we're trying to actually create a user, validate all the data, and also work in a very, very strong authentication system that rely on access tokens and refresh tokens. And I will explain what they are and why do we need them and everything related to them. So the first objective is just to validate the user data now and actually create it. So if you go back to your controllers right here, we had an auth.controller.js, which has the register function right here. So here we have to start working. So we're gonna get few data that we will send in the body, so we have to get them. And we can actually extract them, like for example, we're gonna get a name, and we're gonna get an email, we're gonna get a picture, and then a status, and then also a password. And depending on the informations you would ask from your user, and then the request.body. Do that. And then you can actually go and here maybe console log like all this right here. So maybe you can take all of that or the whole request.body. That's fine. Let me open the console right here. We gotta go back to Postman right here, and let me show you what we will do. Let me close all of this. I gotta go back to the WhatsApp folder that we created. I have this test. I'm gonna actually go and delete that. And let me close everything that I have right here. So I'm gonna go to WhatsApp. I'm gonna create a new collection or like a new folder. So add folder. This folder we're gonna call it auth. So this is gonna be for authentication, and inside of it we'll create a request. And this one is gonna be for register. And for register, it's gonna be a post request. We already talked about this. It's gonna be to HTTP, and then not 3000. It's gonna be 8000. Then API, then version 1, then it's gonna go to auth, then register. That's the URL we already defined. So now if I send something, I have to actually get the console log right here. So we get undefined, undefined. And the reason for that is because we didn't send anything in the body. So now you have to go to the body right here, and then you will go row, and then you'll define JSON type data. And then you will go right here. And for example, the name. I'm gonna actually, sorry, this is JSON, so this is name, and I can go, for example, this is my name, sorry, and then let's add an email now. So for this email, let's have test at gmail, for example, .com, and then we will have, for example, picture. Let me leave it empty, and then for status also I'm gonna leave it empty. So right, so all of them are going to be optional, and then also we have a password here, which is, for example, from 1 2 3 4 5 6. So all of those data we have in the body that I can send now, and I will get those in the console. So you'd see right here. Okay, so there is a problem. Let me just go back and see an expected token in JSON at position 124. Okay, let me go back to the JSON. Probably we made a mistake, so let me just see. Okay, sorry, it should be always double quotes right here. So now our JSON is valid. So now if I send again, I went back to my console, I will get all of those informations that I wanted. Okay, I have the name right here, the email, and the password, as I didn't send the picture and the rest of the information. So now that we know they have these informations, we have to go through one by one and actually validate it depending on our needs. So I can actually create a function that is gonna create, validate, and also add the user to the database, which is gonna be like a service for us. So I can actually go back to my services folder, and I will create auth.service.js, just like this. And this is simply, we can create a function right here, which is going to be exports. I gotta go right here, exports, and then const, let's call this create user. And this is simply is going to be an asynchronous function, and it's going to take the user data, okay? And then simply right here, we want to do all the things we have to do. And yeah, you know, it's going to be like a long test. So let me go back. We don't need to try catch here. So as we already have it here, so I can go for example here and I can define like, you know, the data that I'm gonna get. I'm gonna return from that function, which is the create new user. So I can call that const, and let's call this new user, and we will call that function create user from these services. So I have to add .js right here. So we're gonna create the user and we need to pass the data. Okay, and I'm not gonna pass the request.body. That means that maybe some data there that I don't want to pass. That's why I have to extract it and send it precisely right here. Okay, this is very important for me as I want to send only the data I need. And this one, I want to do the same thing. So I'm just gonna go copy this one and then go right here and paste that, and we're gonna extract that from the user.data rather than the request.body. So here, let's actually test this. So what is the first test that we would have? It's simply there are informations that are necessary and required. If you don't have them, it's gonna be an error, which are the name and then the email and then the password, those three. So I can go right here, so check if fields are empty, okay? And simply what I'm gonna do right here is if, and then we'll see if there is no name or there is no email or there is no password, there is an error. So what we have to do right there is gonna throw, and we're gonna create an HTTP error as we talked about it. So this is gonna be a bad request, so 400, and we can send a message that's gonna say, please fill all fields like that. So now if I went back right here, so if I said now there is, you know, nothing wrong, everything is working fine, but I can actually go down here and, for example, let me remove the name, and it's something required. So now if I send, look what I'm gonna get. So it seems like we have another problem. Let me open the console and let me see what we have. Okay, let me go down and bad request, please fill all field. Okay, so we get the error right here, but it didn't get sent. So though we throw an error, so let me go here and wait, create a user. Okay, and now let me go back here. Okay, so we have in the validation. Okay, let me save again. Okay, let me try again. So now if I went and send, so we're gonna get an error with the status 400 as it's a bad request, and it says please fill all fields. And the reason for that is because we didn't fill the full data in the body. So for example, the same, if I went and remove the email and send, I will still get the same error, but if not, I will send, I will get nothing, and the operation is gonna go through. So that was the first validation. It was very simple. So I have to go back here and let me continue. So now we're gonna actually validate the name length. You see, it's a lot of validation right here, but for me, it's very important and you have to go with it. So check name length, and we'll say if, and we're gonna use validator. So validator, if you used it, which we can import, so import validator from validator, and then we can use that to define is length, as you can get it from here, and you can define actually the length. So you'll define first of all the variable, which is name, and then here you can define like the minimum and maximum. So for example, I want its minimum 2 and then maximum like 16, so that's like the maximum. So we're gonna see if it's not actually the case right here. Sorry, so if, okay, I gotta open curly braces here. So if it's not the case, so if it's the opposite, if it's not in this range, if it's not between 2 and 16, that means there is an error. I can throw this error right here, okay? And I will say throw create HTTP error bad request, and then here we can say something like please make sure your name is between like 2 and 16 characters. This is a good validation. So now let's actually test this. So I know it could be boring for you if you know how to do this, but I gotta go through it. So for example, I went to the name and I made only one letter and I send right here. So you'll see you're gonna get an error that it says, please make sure your name is between 2 and 16 characters. So it does validate the length. And then we'll actually go after that and let's do another validation. This one, you could validate like the status, for example, but there is no need to because it's an optional thing. But we may actually go back and add it, because depending, so you want the status maybe if it's there, but we actually don't want it to be, you know, something longer than something. And that is like a, you know, we can do that. For example, let's go check status link. So I know it's a lot of validation, but we have to go through it. So I'm gonna go right here, and I can actually do it just simply without the validator. I could go if status exists first. So if status exists, so this is like if it exists, then we will go inside and then we'll do this test. We will check if the status.length, because the status might not even exist. Okay, and that's, we don't have to check, because it maybe it's because it's optional. The user might not even, you know, put that. So, and then we'll say if the status.length is more, for example, I don't know, maybe 20, you don't want like a long one, or maybe just, I don't know, 32 something. Okay, this is all depending on you. I'm gonna make it like 64. If it's longer than that, that's too much. We could say something. I gotta go and let me this is smaller, and then I can say status should be, or maybe I can go with a nicer email. Please make sure your status is less than 64 characters. And let's test this. So don't worry, I feel like I'm gonna do something even better right here. So if you went to the status and I send now as it's empty, so it's not gonna be a problem, because we're only gonna test if there is something there. So if the status, if we added something here, I can go and try to add more than 64. I don't know if I am there or not. I'm just trying my best to go through. And now if I send, we will get an error that's gonna say, please make sure your status is less than 64. But if it's empty, we don't actually even test that. But I feel like we can make this even better by going here, and instead of testing one inside one, I can actually go something if status exists and status.length is less than 64. Okay, or more than 64. Okay, because that was the test. So now if I went back again, let me actually do that again, and let's see if it's gonna work. So if we send, it's gonna be the same error. And if we remove everything, so if I went and remove everything, it should not get any error because it's empty, it's optional. Okay, we get nothing here, so everything was done right. For the picture, we're not gonna test anything as it's fully optional. You don't even put anything. And now we'll check if the email is valid. So right here, we'll do something like check if email address is valid. And here what we will do is simply we're going to use the validator itself, and we're going to say it is email. Okay, for what? For the email. And simply we're going to go the opposite. So if it's not valid, so if it's returning false, that means we have an error. So we have to actually do the same, throw, and then create HTTP error dot conflict. Actually, no, this is not a conflict. This is still a bad request. That part is we actually trying to like sign in with an email address that already exists. So this is just a bad request. Okay, and we will say please make sure, or please make sure to provide, or just please, okay, let's go with this. Please make sure to provide a valid email address. You know, I'm going with the nice long version of validation. Okay. And then after that, we will have to check if this email already exists in the database. And that's one of the reasons I already created the user model. So let's do that. So I can go check if user already exists. And then we have to do const check db, for example, and we'll use await. And then we're going to get the user model. So we have to import that. So I have to go to the top and actually go here, import user model. Actually, this is going to be partial import from, and we have to go to the models, and then we'll go to the index.js like that. And simply this is going to be a with user model, and we'll simply use find one because we only need to find one if we find it. And we're going to find it by what? By just simply the email. So we don't have to write email again as it's the same name. This is enough. So we're going to do this test. So if it does exist, so I can go right here. If this checkDB exists, we're going to go the same thing. So throw and then create HTTP error, and then it's gonna be now conflict, because now it actually exists. So there is a conflict right here. So we'll see, please try again with a different email address. This email, for example, this email already exists. I'm doing too long, but I'm trying to provide the best, experience for the user also. So now we need to check the password length. So check password length. Okay, so let me go back to my models and let me see what I've done there. So for my models, for the user, for the password, I made a max length also. So yeah, so maybe we should do that. So I can go if, and if not, validator dot is length, and we will go for the password, and then here for the minimum is gonna be 6, and then minimum 6, and then maximum 128. And if it's not, that means we have to throw an error. And then what we're gonna do, throw create HTTP error dot bad request, and we'll see, please make sure your password is between 6 and 128 characters, something like that. And that's it. And it's better than doing it like individually. So, and that's it for validating the password. So when you do all of that, you actually can now, you'd say, I want to add the user to the database, and you can do that before actually doing anything else, because there is an extra step that we have to do, which is to hash the password, because I cannot take this password this way and put it in the database. That's too obvious. If someone gets access to the database, we'll be able to log in. So we have to hash it, crypt it, whatever you can call that, to make sure it's a password that is secure. But before doing that, then we can actually test just adding the user to the database. Let me open a Mongoose right here. And then now here, I can actually just try now. So I can go cause user, and then we'll go await, and then I'm going to go to my user model here. And then I'm going to actually create, let me create first of all, await new. So we're going to create a new instance of this user model, with which informations are the name and in the email, and then also we're gonna go we have the picture, but this picture, if we don't have it, that's gonna be dependent. So for the picture status, and also let's add now with the without crypting the password, but we will do that later, don't worry. So if we try to do this, and then right here we have to save to add this to the database, and then we have to return the user for us. Okay, so if we want to actually do that, we have to see like if we didn't provide any picture. So for example, this is going to be the picture, but if we didn't provide it, it should be something like by default. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my user model. We already has this link for this default picture. So I can actually go back and go to my env file, and I will create some default data, right? For example, right here, you don't even need to do all of that. You can even just, default data like this, and let me go right here, and let me define default picture, for example, and this is the one it's going to be. And I can also define default and then status, for example, and this one is going to be hey. For example, I can just copy that from my, let me close this objectives, and then go open my model, and then for the status, what is it? I can take this, hey there, I'm using WhatsApp, and I can actually just go for my ProstEnv and add it here. So now what I can do, I can go to the top and get some variables. So maybe right here, I can do something like, this is for env variables, and I can go right here, const, and then we'll extract the default picture, and then we'll extract the default status, and then this is going to come from process.env. Let me try to console log. Actually, we have to hit the route before doing that. So default picture, let me just make sure the names are right, and then let me get that, and then also let me do for default status, and also right here. So now if we have a picture, this is what it's going to be. If we don't have it, it's going to be the default picture. And then for the status, if the status actually exists, then it's fine. But if it doesn't, we will go with the default status like that. So now if I open my console, everything is fine. Let me test this. So let me open actually my Mongoose right here, or like my MongoDB campus, so I can check the changes. So let me zoom in. I'm in my WhatsApp now. If I went to my users and to refresh right here, I have nothing. Okay, there is nothing here. And let me try this. So let me try to log in with this information that I'm gonna add here. So this is the name, email. We're not gonna add any picture, status, and let's see if we got the default values. So if I send right here, something maybe I can do is, let me just go back to my right here auth controller, and then here I can go response.json, and I'm gonna send the new user. So I can see the informations there. So let me go back and send. And let's see what we get. We actually get the data. So we get the name and the email and the picture, which is the default picture, default status, password, the underscore ID, and then the created ads and updated ads, which comes from using the, what we call them, the timestamps. So now if I went to my database and actually refresh the documents, so in this collection users, I have a new user. So you see how easy that was with all sorts of validation. I know this was a long video, but this type of validations are very important. So the next video is to make sure that when we add a user, we crypt the password or hash it. We can't leave it this way. So see you in the next video.